Oh, Monk of Purifications, you are my favorite Tenko tech. All that face healing and cycling efficiency just makes me giddy. 100 prayers in every bottle indeed. Now if only I could... Wait, what's this? Special starter packs. Great value. Is that so? Hello everyone, Lord here. We're back in Shadowverse, but as you may have gathered, we're doing something a bit different today. With Cygame's sudden urge for early rebalancing kinda ruining my schedule, I thought we'd talk about something less prone to abrupt changes. And that is the newly released set for Prebuilt Decks. Whether you're a new player just getting into the game or a grizzled veteran of the waifu wars, the precons in Shadowverse always aim to give you some reason to buy them. But as always, some are simply better than others in various aspects, and in this video I will try to highlight which ones are best suited for which potential buyers. If you're only interested in a specific craft's deck or just want to hear the TLDR version, I encourage you to use the ever so helpful timestamps in the video description below. Finally, keep in mind that my comments on value and playability will mainly be in regards to the rotation format, and that each precon includes an emblem and card back with the same art as the promo, which I will not be talking about, but is nonetheless part of the package. Anyway, without further ado, let's dive in. Law of the Forest. This is the Forest Prebuilt deck. It features quite a few high rarity staples like Insect Lord, Rain Elf Smith, Storied Falconer, and Metera Peerless Shot. It loses out on a few points because of the more fringe nature of the other legendary included, Korwa, Ravishing Designer, but the value proposition here is overall solid. In terms of the out-of-the-box playability, the deck is actually pretty okay. You won't be winning any tournaments within stock form, but it does provide a pretty reasonable skeleton for the ever-popular aggro forest that you can somewhat easily build up to. The promo card for this precon is Sylvan Justice, which is a pretty good card that has seen quite a bit of play in the past. It does tend to lean more towards slower builds, so you won't be using it a lot in the current meta, but it's a staple card that always has chances of making lists in the future. The art's also not too shabby. The Heroes 4. This is the Sword Prebuilt deck. It also features some solid high rarity cards like Sky Commander Celia, Zeta Crimson Lancer, and Dragon Knights. The deck's value is actually significantly higher as of the making of this video than it would be usually, as some of the cards featured in it, namely Chromatic Duel and Vol's Magical Marksman, have recently been adjusted and can be vialed for their full value. Looking simply at how many raw crafting resources each of the decks can provide, the Heroes 4 is actually on top because of this fact. That said, the inclusion of some more questionable high rarity cards like Innocent Princess Prim and even Lancer of the Tempest's recently waning value really detract from the deck. Overall, the proposition here is good, but basically only while the recent rebalance refund is in effect. In terms of out-of-the-box playability, the deck is somewhat lacking. It can maybe take a few casual games in stock form, but building on it is difficult as Sword's current builds are somewhat expensive, and the skeleton provided here is nowhere near sufficient to counteract this. The promo card for this precon is Unbridled Fury, which is a card that has never seen any serious play and likely never will in the future. I may be coming off as too harsh, but this and another promo we'll get to in a moment are basically the biggest disappointments of the entire set. At least the art's somewhat pretty, I guess. Genius Alchemy. This is the Rune Prebuilt deck. It features two solid high rarity cards in the form of Runi, Destiny's Bard, and Cagliostro, Adorable Genius. Sadly, that's about it. The other legendary included, Arulamaya Mystic Seer, is a very fringe card that sees almost no play. And while the other golds featured here aren't terrible, they definitely are not 3 of staples or especially archetype defining. It really puzzles me how a somewhat rogue card like Grand Summoning could be included with 3 copies, while a recent Hot Topic card featuring the character who is both the new Runecraft leader and is featured on this deck's very box, Cagliostro, could be included with a single copy. Needless to say, if you're looking for value, this is the wrong place. In terms of out-of-the-box playability, the deck is, well, awful. For some reason, the precon is completely torn on what it wants to be, featuring cards from multiple archetypes and some that fit basically nowhere. It's a real shame, but there isn't even a real skeleton to build onto here, as even the high rarity cards suffer from this split. The promo card for this precon is Insight, which is basically an eternal staple of at least one Runecraft archetype, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. If you're planning on playing any form of spell boost, you will almost assuredly have 3 copies of this card in your deck. The art on it is really sweet too, but just keep in mind that you are basically paying the 800 crystals just for this promo, as it is the precon's only redeeming quality. Verdict Armageddon. This is the Dragon Prebuilt deck. It features quite a few solid or even staple high rarity cards like Zui, Arbiter of the Skies, Ozzy Dahaka, Forster Dragonewt, Dragon Cleaver Roy, and Ayala Dragon Sword. In fact, when it comes to high rarity cards, True Dragon's Kathacha is basically the only addition that doesn't see very frequent play, but she is only included as a one-off copy. In terms of the value proposition, this precon is grade A excellent. In terms of out-of-the-box playability, this deck is actually not bad. That said, it loses a lot of points as a skeleton to build upon. Despite almost all high rarity cards included here being good, Dragon simply is a very expensive craft to build a meta deck for. The promo card for this precon is Dragon Oracle, which has, and will likely continue being, an eternal staple in almost all Dragoncraft builds. If you're playing Dragon, it is very likely that this card will be in your deck, so if you're looking for a promo you'll put to use often, the alternative Dragon Oracle has you covered. That said, do keep in mind that while this promo's art is pretty cool, the card also boasts the least amount of animation of all promo cards in this set by a country mile, and this significantly more static end product has resulted in some players very vocally voicing their disappointment with it. Love's Last Knell. This is the Shadow Prebuilt deck. It features 3 solid high rarity cards in the form of the included legendaries, Fairy Spirit Maiden and Underworld Ruler Aisha, as well as 3 copies of Everdark Strix. Sadly, that's where the value ends. While some of the other additions could potentially get spots in Shadow builds, they currently do not, and I personally wouldn't rate them very high in a vacuum. If you're looking for value, this is definitely not the right precon for you. In terms of out-of-the-box playability, the deck is pretty awful. Just like the previously covered Runecraft precon, the theme here is absolutely all over the place, which severely hinders both the stock power and the skeleton potential of the precon. The promo card for this precon is Undying Resentment, which is an okay card that has seen some play in the past. While not especially popular right now, I can see it potentially making lists in the future. The art is pretty good too, but again, just like Runecraft, keep in mind that you'd basically be buying the precon just for the promo, as it has very few other redeeming qualities. Dazzling Sword Dance. This is the Blood Prebuilt deck. It features 3 solid high rarity cards in the form of the included legendaries, Vera Night Fanatic and Vania Nightshade Vampire, as well as a single copy of Narmaya Ephemeral Blade. The other golds are actually not bad as well, but in my opinion are significantly below the level of these 3, and are pieces of very different and often not very good current archetypes. The value proposition here is potentially good, though the accuracy of the evaluation suffers significantly due to Blood being one of the worst crafts in the current rotation meta. In terms of out-of-the-box playability, this deck is pretty awful. Just like Rune and Shadow, Blood's precon mixes multiple themes together and the result is, unsurprisingly, pretty disappointing. I will give it some bonus points for making a better skeleton for an actual deck than the other 2, but that's not saying much. The promo card for this precon is Razory Claw, which has been a Bloodcraft staple basically forever. There are a few builds which avoid running this card, however, more often than not, you'll be using this as a 3-of in your Blood decks, both right now and likely for the foreseeable future. The art and animation on it are also both very nice. Eternal Testament. This is the Haven Prebuilt deck. It features a full roster of solid or even staple high rarity cards, which is a first. Basically, every high rarity card here is either at the core of a current meta deck or a very common inclusion. In fact, some cards like White Fang Temple or Delafio Gem Princess are being put into nearly every current Havencraft build, and as such make for extremely valuable additions to any collection. If you're looking for value or have even a passing interest in playing Haven, this deck should be near the top of your considerations. In terms of out-of-the-box playability, the deck is surprisingly pretty awful. Once again, we're treated to an absolute hodgepodge of themes with Tenko, amulets, holy lions, and a few undefinable archetypes all thrown in here for good measure. Even though the singular cards included are almost all very powerful on their own, the lack of synergy between them really hinders the stock version's power, as Haven strongly relies on cross-card interactions to get maximum value. Unsurprisingly, this also means that the deck doesn't make for a good skeleton for any singular build. However, the problem is also reinforced by Haven being a somewhat expensive craft to build in general. The promo card for this precon is Hallowed Dogma, which, much like Sylvan Justice and Undying Resentment, is a pretty okay card that sees occasional play. While much more rarely a 3-of staple, it does see significantly more 1-of tech card inclusions in lists compared to the other two. It also features my personally favorite artwork and animation of this round of precons. Warriors of Steel. This is the Portal pre-built deck. It features a full roster of solid or even staple high rarity cards, much like the previously mentioned Havencraft precon. Basically every high rarity card here is included in one of Portalcraft's two main archetypes, with some, like Paracelsus, potentially being in both. While generally a pretty great value proposition, the deck does lose some points for somewhat strongly leaning towards the Artifacts archetype of Portalcraft, which is, at least currently, significantly less popular and presumably less powerful than its puppet competition. In terms of out-of-the-box playability, the deck is actually pretty okay. As mentioned previously, the deck strongly leans towards the Artifacts archetype and gives you a very solid skeleton for it. While the stock version might take a few games, if you buy this deck, I strongly urge you to make additions to it as soon as possible, as a relatively small additional investment can flesh out the deck very well. The promo card for this precon is Dimension Cut, which once again is an okay card that sees occasional play. It's somewhat less frequently played than other examples in this category, and is mainly associated with the Artifacts archetype, which once again is currently not too popular, but it is still a reasonable consideration for the future. The art of the card is pretty nice, and the animation is very cool, though quite intense, which may not be to some people's liking. Okay, let's sum all that up. Here's a TLDR list. In terms of the value proposition, we have Portalcraft taking up the top spot, followed by a tie between a dragon and sword, with sword being here only temporarily while the current vow bonus is active, followed by Forest, followed by Haven, then Blood, then Rune, and Shadow in the last spot. In terms of the out-of-the-box playability, we have Portalcraft taking the first spot once again, followed by a tie between Forestcraft and Dragoncraft, followed by Sword, and followed by a four-way tie between the other remaining decks. In terms of the promo value, and this is the objective value, aka how often you'll end up playing or seeing the card, we have a Dragon and Blood tied for the first spot, followed by Rune, followed by Forest, followed by a three-way split between Haven, Portal, and Shadow, and Sword in very, very last place. In terms of the promo value, and this is the subjective value, aka how cool/ugly the card and animation combo actually is, at least according to me, we have a three-way tie for first place between Havencraft, Bloodcraft, and Portalcraft, followed by another three-way tie between Runecraft, Shadowcraft, and Forestcraft, followed by Swordcraft, and in very, very, very last place we have Dragoncraft, and this is mainly because the animation just disappointed me too much. Finally, here's a list of all the custom audio clips that play when using the promo cards, along with the characters saying them, just in case you're curious. And that is the new set 4 pre-built decks in a nutshell. What do you think? Are you happy with the value provided here and or satisfied with the promo card for your favorite craft? Or do you think the decks were too hit or miss in terms of value, and or just can't get over Unbridled Fury as the Sword promo or the near static Dragon Oracle? Let me know in the comments. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, I've been Lord, and this has been Shadowverse. Thanks for watching.